Yes. Carolyn, thank you. And I would just note for the record that the members of the ESS subcommittee, um, by my count, unanimously approved the meeting summary from January 23rd. And we have taken no other action, and we're currently reviewing the item on the agenda relating to a change to Chapter 7, terms of service for the electronic services system. So I'm going to ask Lisa or Corey to correct me if I describe this in a wrong way, but generally speaking, the way our system is set up is that if a user is automatically deactivated because of lack of use, they literally are no longer in the system. This kind of keeps us in a position of not accumulating many users who are just no longer using the system anymore. But the result of that is that um, one of two things happens. Um, if the user says, "Hey, I need to get back into the system," but they can't because their account has been deactivated for lack of use, if they're a member of the organization, they can go to their organization administrator and then they can ask them to reactivate them. If a user is an individual user and not a part of an organization with an administrator, then they do have the ability to contact our customer support team and ask to have their account reactivated. Um, the issue that we're trying to communicate is that um, sometimes I don't have any data on it, but a user may come back to the system, wish to be activated, and somebody else had grabbed the username that they were previously using because they had been deactivated. And the resolution of that issue is just to simply have that user create a new username. So it's not a huge policy issue, but one of the main things in reviewing the policy procedure and procedures is that we felt like the policy should reflect what our actual practice is. So one of the intentions of this, which is primarily reflected in subsection 5 of the amendment, is just simply to declare that a username could be lost or reassigned to somebody else if their account becomes deactivated. Um, and this is something that they just should expect as a user. Um, and part of it also is, practically speaking, um, it becomes a more significant administrative burden if we were to try to change our system or develop it so that, we were protecting or preserving for a no longer active user the use of that username into perpetuity. And that doesn't seem reasonable to do. So um, we're essentially saying or declaring that usernames are not owned by the users, they're owned by ESS. And if you become deactivated, you do run the risk of losing that username to another user who comes in after your account is deactivated. Um, and uh, and so really the intent of this is just simply to be transparent and open to all of our users to say, hey, this is the rule that we follow, just so you know. So we encourage you to keep your account active if you intend to use the system again at some point in the future. It would be a fair question for the members of the subcommittee to ask um, is 120 days, which is the current policy, is that right? Is that fair? Um, should it be something different? And I think that is something that we will continue to evaluate. Um, right now, I would not judge it to be a heavy burden to expect the user to log in at least once every 3 months. Um, but there are some who might have a different opinion of that. So that concept of changing that is not necessarily what we intend to bring onto the table today, but it is a part of the contest. So I would stop there, and Lisa, if you would want to clarifying anything that I said or give further explanation, please do so now.
I think you accurately described what we're doing every day, what we're practicing. Yeah, I think everything you said is correct. And I'd
That,
be happy to answer any questions. Carolyn's
that,
asking if there have been any complaints. I don't think they're really complaining more than I can't get logged in, and we remind them, hey, you have to log in every 120 days, your username becomes inactive. And maybe what you want to do is set a calendar reminder 90 days from now to log in. So it's not really a complaint, more of a frustration. I think we've all experienced that when we've lost a password or
yeah.
something like that.
I would say, and this is anecdotal because I don't do the customer support directly as often as maybe I used to, but my perception is that there are users who have come and tried to get their account reactivated and have come with the expectation that they would be able to use the same username. And when that doesn't happen, that can be a source of frustration. I think we have to acknowledge that. That's why we think it's important for us we need to be more open and transparent to communicate with people. Hey, this is how it works so that, there's no surprise at a later point in time.
Well, I
So
think, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, those are the same people that had a username on the legacy system, have not logged in since it was deactivated in December of 2023, and now wonder why they can't get logged in, because we did require all individual users to reapply, and we monitor those, daily from 8 to 5 and make sure everyone's approved as quickly as possible. Do
Yeah,
the due diligence if something's just doesn't look correct, if the
yeah,
address is weird and name's not complete. So, but those are the people that say, oh my gosh, I've had this same username for 20 years and now I can't get in.
yeah.
Thank
And
you.
it is fair to say that we did not, we could not. It really just was impractical to try and port over every user from the legacy system into the new system, and we did require everybody to set up a new account. So that is true.
Nope, that's fine, and that makes sense. Thank you. On another question, has anybody complained about the limitations of the free search? Like, hey, I own a farm in blah 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 county, and I've hit my 10 document limit, but I'm still looking for more easements or agreements or something like that. Have you had any issues with the limitations of how much you can search?
It's Lisa, I can jump in. Rarely. And there's a process in place to easily increase the number of views that they want. Maybe they need it for a day or two because they're trying to put something into a trust. That's a situation we dealt with recently, and we were able to help that person quickly. On the business side, the limits are 120 documents per day or images per day. Everybody can do unlimited searches and unlimited index views. You as recorders have unlimited image views as well. But where we see it on the business side, where they're running out of images, and we're happy to help them and increase it for them as they need it through the process of submitting the form. So we've got record, is a lot of times with a surveyor. They're trying to determine where something's going, or they're working with a lot of the wind leases or easements for a power line. That's where we're seeing those go over. They're trying to get maybe all the corner certificates in one county. So they're not really complaints, just, hey, what can you help me? I need to get this finished today.
I would just add a couple of observations to that. One is that we do have organizations, CoreLogic being one that comes to mind, that do a lot of research on our system. And they have adapted. We haven't had any issues with them. And usually they end up having multiple staff people doing searches so they can, access more information per day. And we came up with the limit that we have, but just figuring out sort of as a time study, okay, how many images can a person reasonably view and download in the course of an 8-hour day. And that's sort of where we ended up with the figure that we're using. So my general perception is that the limitations that we chose in the beginning actually fit within what most people would ordinarily do, and that when we have run into circumstances where somebody has actually got a legitimate reason, they're on a short-term project and they need to do more, we have accommodated them. We don't make it permanent, but we provide it for a limited period of time, and that seems to have satisfied most of those things. And then the other thing I really need to mention from a policy perspective is that our land records is prohibited by law from facilitating batch transfers. And so if you kind of open up the system so that everything's unlimited, you're starting to tread into that territory of doing something that looks like a batch transfer. And we're prohibited from doing that. So we think that the limitations that we have in place are workable, reasonable, flexible, and they're aligned with the statutory limitations that we have to live with under. Great questions. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. And may I then request a member of the subcommittee to make a motion to approve this policy change, which is not a final action. It would be advanced to the full ESS coordinating committee for further review at their May meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve it. This is Kathy Voith.
Thank you,
Carolyn,
Kathy.
Carolyn Sebrecht, I can second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye, or write it in the chat pod.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? I hear none. I would declare the motion to be approved. I just want to make a parenthetical note, and that is we're done with the action items for today, but it sort of has been a tradition that I sort of act as the facilitator and the sort of Robert's Rules of Order type person in these meetings. It does not have to be that way. If any of the members of the subcommittee would like to consider stepping forward to act as the chair of the subcommittee to facilitate that, I just want to be clear that I'm very open to that, even though this has been a long-standing practice. We used to do the same thing in the finance subcommittee, and I'm reminded of it because I can see Stacy Heritage's video running. But a year or so ago, I forget exactly when it happened, we made a change and she volunteered to be the chair of the finance subcommittee, and now she conducts all the meetings. And I'm just the guy, given the details or whatever, and Samantha does too. We could do the same thing for this committee. So no decisions have to be made today because we're done with the action items today. But if any of you members of the subcommittee would like to step forward and be in that role, I would be happy to share the podium with you. Okay. Then let's move on to the next item on the agenda, and that relates to contracts and agreements. And I need to skip ahead here a little bit. So I'm currently on page 29 of your packet. And all I'm sharing with you here is this is a copy of the master agreement that we have with Solutions. And it is our practice that when we have maintenance agreements with local service providers that we follow a similar pattern with every agreement like that. And so our practice has been that every year, if we're going to do an amendment to the agreement, that we bring a template to the full ESS coordinating committee, and we explain to them what the changes are, and we ask them to approve the template. Then we enter into discussions with each local service provider with the idea of having that same template used by every service provider. Our goal is to treat every service provider exactly the same, and we have done that. But I will also acknowledge that there are occasions where a particular attorney in a particular company will say, "Hey, let's just change this word from this to that," and it really has no material difference. It's just sort of the way they do business. We will make a fine-tuning adjustment for that. But in terms of the important stuff, like what's the scope of work, or how much are we going to pay them? We treat everybody the same. So I wanted you to be aware that that process is nearly complete for this cycle, that we have entered into signed agreements with the primary service providers, so Solutions and Tyler and Cott. We're in the process of finishing up discussions with Avenue. We have finalized an agreement with DevNet, and there's a small loose end that we're working on with the imaging provider, which is now known as Data instead of Image Tech. And I anticipate that that will be completed very shortly. So that process is done, essentially, and we just have a few loose ends to tie up, and I wanted to review that with you. Now, there is an exception, and the exception is that Fiddler gave us notification under the terms of the agreement that was already in force that they were going to be withdrawing from the support agreement. They no longer wanted to operate in that manner anymore. And I'm going to just skip ahead here to share with you that communication, just so we're being transparent about that. And so this is the communication that we received from Fiddler back in February. And I think some people kind of thought that we would be upset about that. But, if this is something they prefer to do, then, we can work to accommodate that. They have indicated that they're going to continue to support their counties, that things that they're required to do under our law that they will implement. And we're accepting that at face value. So the way we intend to communicate with them is, first of all, when there is a support issue, there's a member or one or more members of either our administrative team or our technical team that does know how to communicate with the technical people at Fiddler, and we know what their support email addresses are, and we have successfully communicated with them for years, and we intend to behave in a very similar manner. The current agreement with Fiddler is still in force until June 30th, but I can report to everybody, and Lisa or Corey may wish to chime in on this as well, but that the communication between the members of the respective staffs has continued to be professional, functional, everything's working as it should. And uh, there are technical issues that come up that need to be addressed. And so when they are addressed, our API provides them with information from a technical perspective. Our system sends their system a message, and they can see that. Um, and then the other um, uh, processes, if we need to escalate it to the technical team, the right people communicate with each other. And we anticipate that that will continue, and that certainly is our intent. I'm looking at Carolyn's notes here. Yes, there is a typo in that solutions agreement that refers to Tyler, and that has been fixed. And then the other issue is that is there an updated list of which county is which with what service provider? Um, and I do have an updated list. It's nothing that we typically publish, but if any of you are interested in a copy of that, I'm sure Lisa or I could get that in your hands. So send us a note, an email after the meeting, or just post it here in the chat pod, and we'll make sure you get a copy of that if that's something that you're interested in. The other thing that I wanted to just make sure we talk to you about is that um, uh, because we, in order to facilitate communications between our respective systems, we do that through what is known as an application programming interface. Um, and the application programming interface is basically the rules for our system talking to the service provider system and vice versa. So the place to look in our master agreement that relates to that are the two exhibits in the master agreement. The one that is very important is the scope of work, which is also known as Exhibit A. Um, and then we also have technical specifications that are outlined in Exhibit B. Um, we describe the business processes. We publish the API so that the data schema that we have is known and available to each service provider, and um, then the specific technical specifications are outlined. These are the 2 pages that we post that have all of the technical specs about our data schema. As we have worked with the service providers to migrate to the new e-submission API, these are the rules that we have published. And when we make changes, we give notice to the service providers when those changes are coming, so they have ample time to adjust and modify their systems to match what we are asking them to do. What I would anticipate, and this is sort of um, the the relationship to the standards subcommittee, is that in the past we handled all of this discussion within the context um, of the contracts. You know, we've always addressed that within the master agreements with each service provider. Because we are migrating to maybe a different methodology, a different paradigm, so to speak, with the approach that Fiddler is taking. What we were thinking is that we may need to actually codify these in the policies and procedures, because they won't have a contract to read anymore. We're going to have to publish it and share it with them in some other way. And the policies and procedures seem to be the right place to do that. So this is not an action item today, but I guess I just want to give a heads up to everybody on the standards subcommittee that um, this may in fact be brought back to you as a policy that can be referred to in the future. So if you're interested in, okay, what are the standards that we ask the service providers to live up to? It's in these 2 exhibits and in our published API documentation. So if you have questions about that, please give it a look. Okay, that takes us through the update, and I guess what I would say the appropriate thing to do, given the timeliness of it, is to switch the conversation over to the status of House File 328. There are 2 things that I emailed to you all, that is if you're on the subcommittee, um, this morning. so you would have it, and that is a copy of the actual amendment that was adopted by the House Ways and Means Committee yesterday. It is in the form of a um, uh, strike everything after the enactment clause. So effectively, this amendment that was adopted became the bill, and then the bill, House File 328, was reviewed and approved by the full Ways and Means Committee, and that means that it's now out in front of the full chamber of the House and is eligible for debate. Um, I don't have any information about what that looks like because that's a decision that's made by the House leadership, and they have a lot going on. We're getting close to the end of the legislative session, so we aren't really sure. But this is a document and a bill that has advanced through the legislative process. And technically speaking, because it is a Ways and Means Committee, it is eligible for debate all the way up until the very last minute of the legislative session. So this is definitely a live bill and something that we should give attention to. One other thing that I distributed to you this morning, and I'm sorry, this is really fresh news, so we weren't able to distribute it any sooner than that. Is that this is a document that was prepared by the House Republican Caucus staff. It's something they do for their members to kind of give each of the members who may not be paying attention to every specific issue, a summary of what it does and what its effects are. And uh, and so this is available for review already. Um, I do believe that the main bullet points that was provided by the cautious staff um, um, is and generally speaking, an accurate reflection of the contents of the bill. There are some nuances that I think really are not fully explained, but it's intended to be a summary, and so we are always going to analyze it more specifically than maybe somebody else would. I see the message from Aaron that asking if we are going to update the packet to include this document. Um, I'm sorry, I haven't had time to do that yet because this is sort of late breaking news, but we certainly can do that. Um, so after this meeting, we will update the packet to include this so that you can download the information. So we're sharing it with you today because it's fresh, but we will update the packet to reflect that, and then you can download it if you wish. Okay, so I'm going to just take a few minutes to um, identify what the main bullet points are, what the bill does, and I may take a few minutes just to identify some things that we have uncertainty or questions about, and then we can open it up to a discussion. Pardon me for a second. Okay, I'm back. So just to start with, the a big point of discussion this year, particularly in the context of this particular bill, not in the bill advanced by the Recorders Association and ESS, but certainly in the sponsors of this bill, is this whole question of the 28-year agreement. Current law, which was established by the legislature many years ago, basically said everybody has to participate, and then they required in that legislation that the the whole program be administered under a 28-year agreement. That's what the legislation said. It was adopted back in 2005, and that's what we've done ever since then, and we've operated under that assumption. There are some who say, I don't want to be a part of the 28-year agreement. I, I, I don't believe a 28-year agreement should be mandatory. And then they've said, I want out of the 28-year agreement. And so this bill does include sort of a blanket provision that basically negates the current law, which says that everybody has to participate and there has to be a 28-year agreement. That would be removed. And so every county would have the opportunity, if they so choose, to withdraw from the 28-year agreement. Another major thing, I'm going to skip to the next bullet point, is that, and obviously this is of interest to many county recorders, and that is that the base recording fee would be increased from $5 to $10. Essentially, the elements of the proposal that was advanced by recorders and ESS is being adopted. That is, it would increase the fee to $10 per page. It would eliminate the fee for additional transactions. It would eliminate the non-standard fee. Uh, so it does actually simplify the fee process as had been proposed. When Senate File 371 over on the Senate side was introduced, we knew that the Bar Association was concerned about large documents, and in the proposal that was presented there was a $500 cap on the recording fee for very large documents. In the House Ways and Means Committee amendment, that cap was changed from $500 to $250. We know that the vast majority of documents are 5 pages or less, and in terms of its financial impact, yes, it would have an impact in specific circumstances, but it's not what I would characterize as a deal breaker, so to speak, because the base fee going from 5 to 10 is a big deal. Then you may recall that the proposal that was advanced allocated $2 from each document, the fee for each document, to a county recorder technology fund, and that is in this bill. So that is there for everybody. And then they also have retained the idea of an electronic services system fund that $3 would be allocated to, but only by the counties who are members of the 28-year agreement. So, under the provisions of the bill, we, and the one that we had advanced, we said $3 from every county, probably because we were operating under the assumption that every county would continue to participate. But what this bill now says is that those counties that are not a part of the 28-year agreement, they wouldn't have to set aside $3 per document. They would have to contribute $1 per document. I can share with you that in some of the discussions that were had with legislators prior to the Ways and Means Committee action, we had expressed the position that that every county, whether they were in the 28-year agreement or not, should make that same $3 contribution per document to support the whole system. That is not the way this particular bill was written, and difference of opinion on that, and it's something that may be subject to further discussion. Then another kind of main point of discussion has been, do we want to retain a statewide system? And I think there was some listening on that point. And so if you read through the bill, you'll find that there are certain provisions that look like it says, hey, even if you're not in the 28-year agreement, you still have to send records up to the statewide system, and then you'll also have to support what they describe as the flow of documents from the ILR e-submission service into the county. I'm going to just say, broadly speaking, to the subcommittee that the bill doesn't quite go all the way in requiring that, and maybe it's just a technical error, or I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but um, from from our point of view, and again, I'm speaking broadly, and I'm not being critical. I'm just saying that if it really is the intent that regardless of whether you're in the 20-year agreement, that you participate in and support the ILR e-submission service, or to upload records, that it doesn't quite go that far and maybe needs some corrections. Um, uh, Renee Arnold, thank you for your question. And actually, we would intend to offer some language on that. I don't have it developed fully yet because we just got the latest version of this bill yesterday. But give me a little bit of time, and we'll get back to Representative Nordman with maybe some suggestions for that. So, but I think we do appreciate sort of the declared intent to accomplish that. And in terms of, if you were recalling some of the things that I was describing when we had the conference a while back, they're much closer to kind of the suggested middle ground that we were thinking of. So, yep. Thank you, Renee. I appreciate your comments on that. A couple of other things I just would mention, and then I'd be happy to answer and go through the bill and answer any specific questions. Is that there are provisions in there to modify the legislation to include a new form of the Back to Blue program, expanding it to be more of a shielding program as opposed to just a redaction program. So that is included. And then, many but not all of the document formatting and indexing requirements that were included in Senate File 371 have been included in this bill as well. They didn't include absolutely everything, but there are a number of things that they did include. And so I think the way we would characterize kind of the current status is taking a fresh look at 328 and then having some discussion about, okay, as Renee was requesting or suggesting, okay, if we were going to improve it or perfect the bill, what would it do? So I'm going to stop there, and again, just with the caveat that we're still in the process of dissecting everything and sort of evaluating everything. Um, you know, that I don't have all the answers right now. I could try to answer a question if you had one, um, and then we can move on. So questions from the subcommittee. I'm looking at the chat pod and I'm seeing the question or the comment from Carolyn. So my answer is yes, your description would be correct about what is in this bill. So if you're just thinking about the first page of the document, and I know some people have thought about it that way. So if the recording fee is $10, if you're in the 28E agreement under the provisions of this bill, $5 would go to the general fund, $2 to the Recorder's Technology Fund, and $3 would go to the Electronic Services Fund or whatever it ends up being called. If a county is not in the 28E agreement, then it would be basically $5 to the general fund. I'm sorry, $7 to the general. It would be $8 to the general fund, actually. Sorry, $7 to the general fund, $1 to the electronic services fund, and $2 to the Recorder's Technology Fund. The other comment that you made is that that Iowa Land Records e-submission would still be able to charge up to the $3 fee for electronic submission. What we don't know is exactly how that integration with a non-28E county would look like. I'm speculating here, okay? So just take some salt with this, okay? But one way it would be the county is not in the 28E agreement, but they continue to choose the current e-submission service, which honestly we hope is what would happen. But in that and in that case, the $3 fee, everything would work exactly the way it does today. If a county that left the 28-year agreement decided that they did not want to use the e-submission service that ILR offers today in its current form, but wanted to connect to ILR in some other way, then we aren't sure what the financial arrangements would be. It would be desirable if that was absolutely necessary to do, um, to kind of keep the business arrangement the same, and that is just to provide it to the county in some mechanism, and we would collect the fee and distribute it to the county just the way we do today. But the business process might be a little bit different, and the technical connection might be a little bit different. We had communicated, I believe, prior to the action of the Ways and Means Committee, um, to say, we hope that the county would allow us to connect to that, with without the county charging us a fee for access. That communication really never was completed, so I think that's a point of clarification um, that needs to be discussed. Okay, other questions? Looking at the chat pod, I don't see any other questions at this time. Are there other questions or comments from the members of the Standards Committee, and of course, anybody else who wants to make a comment in the chat pod as well? Okay, so more to come on that. Thank you. I hope I captured the main points. I would encourage everybody to, review it carefully and then send questions our way. We would be happy to discuss it with you. Any other comments? If not, I'm going to move back to the agenda. Last call. Comments or questions? Okay. There's a couple of comments about the stakeholders. The stakeholders we would define to be the kind of the main lobbying influences, if you will. So that includes the Bar Association, the Bankers Association, realtors. I would include surveyors in that, credit unions too. And then there are ancillary groups out there too. So if you looked at the bill and the legislative system today, you would note that the Sheriff's Association is registered in favor of the bill, as an example. And then there are some other groups that would be involved. And I think everybody has been communicating with the stakeholders, and we have been too. Senate File 371 was crafted with a lot of input from stakeholders. So I think maybe that's part of the reason why, House File 328 does have components from several different sources. Okay, so we have an hour left. We've been doing really good. In your packet of materials, there are several different memos that I have written here, and we can talk about them separately or we can talk about them together. But we're really wanting to get your input and comments. And so some of this stems from the discussions that have been ongoing about the 28-year agreement and what are we trying to do. There have been comments made that some counties want to have more options or more choices. And there's a certain underlying subtext that, maybe the applications that Iowa Land Records currently represents in the form of the search application and the submission application don't quite meet everybody's needs, and people are looking for something different. And then I'm really kind of skipping ahead here, but there have been some questions about what can we do to facilitate the electronic recording trade names as an example. Uh, and one thing that was not included in House File 328 that was included in Senate File 371 that was discussed quite a bit, and then included in that version of the bill was a provision that set a standard for what recording reference numbers would be. And in Senate File 371, after discussion, we were basically saying, let's have a number that starts with a county prefix so that no matter what document it is going forward, you know what county it was in just by that code, and then specify the year so everybody knows what the year is, and then the numeric sequence for the recording reference number, with up to 6 digits. That's kind of what we said. And one of the benefits of that is it does create some consistency, and it also ensures that every single document, no matter where it's recorded, has a unique identifier that is not replicated in any other county, which today's methodology across many counties, there is a lot of duplication because those differentiations are not made. House File 328 doesn't do it exactly the same way. It includes a provision that just requires a numeric sequence, and it doesn't speak to some of those other requirements. So those are some differences that may need to be discussed. But um, the first set of questions that I had prepared for this is, okay, we have an e-submission application, we have a search application, we have APIs that are published that we expect the service providers to use to communicate with us, and we really are trying to operate as a consistent statewide system. But um, you know, we created the new search and e-submission applications with a lot of input going. If you go back to 2020, 2021, a lot of input from recorders, a lot of input from stakeholders to design what we have today. And so a set of questions I think is legitimate to ask, given the, maybe the interest in having some options and choices, would be, okay, what changes would you make? We'd like to maybe use this as an opportunity to discuss that and just hear, if you were going to change the ILO system and specifically the applications that we have, what would those changes be? Because that seems to be an underlying thought about the whole statewide system concept. So does anybody have any comments that you would want to offer or make about changes that you would like to see made in our applications?
This is Kathy. I just have one thing. Occasionally when we um, decline a document and then later I want to go back to see, like, to look at the document again, or, to show my deputy or something what someone submitted that I declined so she knows if it comes back in, like what needs changed. But sometimes I don't pay attention to who the submitter was. So when I'm searching in the one search to find what was submitted, because I don't remember. I just wish I could search by like the date or date and time instead of like you have to put who submitted it, and I don't always remember what attorney's firm or who submitted it. That's my
Right.
only thing.
Okay. So the so I'm hearing a couple of things there, Kathy. One is, is there a way that the metadata could be retained? So and by that I mean including, the preparer of the document, so that they could be contacted at some future point. Am I capturing that idea correctly?
Well, yeah, or just so to like, if it comes back in, like, so sometimes like I decline the document because it maybe had 2 or 3 things wrong with it, and then I want to show my deputy later, like why, or get their opinion
Yeah.
on something like when I declined it. So then when I go to search for it, I've finally figured out how to search for what I have declined, but I think you have to know who submitted it and, the like the attorney's firm or the bank
Right.
name or whatever.
Right.
I wish I could just put like just the date and it would show me everything from just that date or date and time and not have to know who submitted it, because many times if it's an attorney like out of state, I don't
Yeah.
pay any attention to what
Right.
their firm name was.
Right.
This is what
Um,
we asked for before, Phil. We
Yeah.
used to have it in the old system, and I've asked about it a few times. So
And we've talked about it a lot. Now I thank you for clarifying that, because now I have a clear picture of what you're talking about. And what we have talked about is modifying our search e-submission search application so that you do a simple date range search, right? And so you're not trying to remember who the submitter was. You're not trying to remember who the or what the group name was, but you'd like to be able to just do a search, based on a date range. And that is something that we want to do. I know this is sort of, and you might, I don't know how you would characterize this, and you're probably tired of hearing about it, but, one of the reasons why we have asked for some additional resources as represented in um, Senate File 371, but also in this latest version of the bill, although in a different way, is that we don't have unlimited developers, and we have a lot of things going on at the same time, and so we need resources for additional development activities so that we can more quickly respond to this request. I can tell you that Lisa is a big champion for this on our staff, and I've kind of come around on it as well. So it is something that I would say definitely intend to do, and we'll do it as soon as we have the resources and bandwidth to permit us to do it. Our main focus right now is that, we have been working to update our APIs. And it's not that the old APIs didn't work, it's just that, like any other technology, it gets dated, and then there are security holes that have to be patched. And updating the e-submission API has been a huge priority, and we still have work to do to update the county upload API, and we don't have unlimited resources to do everything else. So, the importance of the legislation from that perspective is it would provide some additional resources so that we could maybe expand our development team a little bit, so that we could address that and a number of other issues that we know are in the backlog. But fair for you to bring it up again. So thank you. Is there uh, are there other ideas that you'd like to advance in
Well,
either?
it's Lisa. I'd like to jump in and respond to Aaron's question or comment. It would help us check for skipped document numbers. You could do that through ILR search and select status search, which is the last item on the left menu. If you need me to walk you through that, give me a call or let me know how I can help you do that. But that's a really good way to check and make sure that all your documents are complete on Iowa Land Records for each day.
Thank you, Lisa. Carolyn's added a couple more here. Let me start with the second one first. Being able to reject the whole set of documents if it's the wrong county and not have to decline each document one by one. We agree with that. That is an enhancement that we would like to implement. I would definitely say it's on the to-do list. And so again, I would put it in the category of resources permitting. That is something we definitely want to do. The whole idea of one-time submitters being able to submit, such as a trade name or another document. Um, yeah, I get your comment, Aaron. Thank you. I think you're addressing Lisa's comment, so thank you. And we agree that there are some things that we could do differently that would save us time. Back to the question about one-time submitters. So, we have talked about this on a number of occasions over time. This is not a new issue. You have those users who are not in the real estate business. They don't really have a frequent need to record. They find themselves in a situation where they want to get something to record and they don't want to go to the courthouse. They'd rather go online and log in and submit it. And you know, it is something that has not only been distressed here, but nationally. And we even went back to the PREA group to say, you know, who is doing this and how is it being done? And I would ask Lisa to share what she learned from that discussion, but it is technically possible to do. We can do that. I think the question that we ask ourselves and we would ask you is, do you all feel comfortable with that? Is that something that you think is appropriately secure? Are you confident enough that the people who might use a on-demand, what I would describe as an on-demand submission system, does that provide enough comfort to everybody about the authenticity of the submitter for you to say, yes, I would accept that as as a method of submission, because our answer so far to that, and I'm not saying this is the perfect or the permanent or only right answer, but our answer so far to that has been, we're not sure that that is secure enough to today to prevent fraud from happening. And somebody that submits something that they shouldn't, that might slip through the cracks, that could have an adverse effect on somebody unintentionally. You know, do we have enough knowledge about who the submitter is? So, you know, part of our answer also has been, you know, we have bankers, we have lawyers, other people that are, you know, legitimate, they've been vetted, they're connected to the system. And so, um, you know, a client could go to one of those professional service providers and have something electronically submitted, you know, on their behalf. Now, it probably would cost some money from the standpoint of receiving those professional services, but you know, that would provide an additional layer of authentication that you know, might increase your comfort level. However, if that is not a concern, and if the group said, uh, "Hey, ILR, we want you to go create an on-demand submission system," that is technically possible to do. Um, and so we would ask ourselves, how would we authenticate a user that signed up to the system or didn't sign up, but just didn't even log in? They just went to the site and said, "Hey, I want to submit this document." And if they had access to a PDF and wanted to attach it to it through a website, uh, is there something that we should do to authenticate that person beyond just accepting their credit card payment? So, from my point of view, this is not a something that IOR is just saying, no, we don't want to do that. It's really, I'm gonna have to put it back on the you that's the standards committee, which is why we put it on the agenda. It's addressed in one of the memos that I provided to you. Um, and um, it's the one that is on page 84, if you wanted to look at it. Um, uh, if this is something that is supported, then you know, we would ask the standard subcommittee to make a recommendation and to advance it to the full ESS committee.
This is Kathy. My opinion is no, because I don't want just Joe Schmo creating his own quick claim deed and trying to record it. I feel like a trade name, the person could go to their personal banker and ask them to e-record it. I mean, an affidavit should be prepared by an attorney. A POA was probably prepared by an attorney at some time. And I'm guessing too, like their banker could record that if they needed it for like banking reasons or something.
Other comments? Colin, please weigh in.
I mean, there are issues, and it's not gonna be resolved today. I just wanted to put it out there that at least in Lynn County, we are getting asked more and more often, and I didn't know without having discussion that there's no way to address these needs, so I wanted to put it out there. Again, I mean, they could do different mechanisms. It's just the hassle for that one-time submitter, and I don't know that there is a good answer, like you said, for that. But we should be probably working on it as that's, you know, they're still constituents and customers, so having the conversation, I guess, is a way to get started on problem solving for the future.
Hey, it's Lisa. I'm going to jump in. For the rest of you that are on here, maybe put a message in the chat. How often do you receive those requests for a one-time trade name or another document? I'd really like to gauge the interest.
Lisa, would you just continue? I asked you to communicate with Priya about this. What what were you able to learn from that?
I did hear back from Stevie. So if you're involved in Priya, everybody knows Stevie. There's one county, I believe they're in Ohio, that does have the one-off available. It is through Simplifile. I did start down the path of, okay, they need my email. They need to send me a token to my cell phone. And then I stopped when it got to the point that they wanted a picture of my ID. So I didn't want to, continue at that point, but it is out there. It does require a credit card payment, but I did stop. So we know it's out there. I assume that additional counties will be added going forward, but that's all I've got. I'm happy to ask any questions.
Phil, I had sent you, forwarded you a couple of emails that I had received from customers, 1 week. And have you not had anybody else that, has forwarded emails wanting to record that are from individuals besides me?
It's Lisa. Carolyn, I can respond. We receive calls from individuals who want to establish an e-submission account, who have most often called a recorder's office and want to find out how they can do it. They're out of state, they're helping mom with her trust, something estate related, or they don't have the original and they need to record that document. I can think of one situation specifically where somebody went to a recorder's office with a photocopy. It was not, they were refused and told to contact our office to establish an e-submission account. In general, we shy away from doing that because of the time and training involved to help someone with one document. Erin, you said you had bankers about filing trade names. If a bank has any submission account, they can absolutely file trade names electronically. And we would be happy to connect them with how that process works.
I can give one anecdotal story of an experience that I've had, and it has to be over a decade ago, near the beginning of when we started the e-submission service. And we had a situation, I think it might have even been in Lynn County. This might have been before your time, Carolyn, but there was a person that was in the service overseas that needed to have a document recorded, and we, we, we tried to figure out, well, how can we do it? And this is somebody that the person I was communicating with in the recorder's office, they knew, they believed it was absolutely authentic, and so we actually had the person, the service person, email the document to me personally, and then I took that PDF document and then submitted it electronically on my own e-submission account because I maintain one in production for testing and so on, and we got it recorded. And I forget how payment was made. I don't even remember that part, but you know, we did it. It was a one-off thing, not something they did on demand through some website, but you know, we helped make it happen. So, um, uh, I would I would just again say to the subcommittee, it is absolutely something that we could do. I mean, technically, this is not this is not rocket science. We could stand up a web page and we could say, you know, if you are a citizen, and we could even ask for certain forms of identity or whatever to go with it, and then say, you know, you can submit, and then all we need is your a valid credit card, and we can do that. So um, um, I am not here to stand in the way of it from a technical perspective. I think it's one that I think I just want you to think about to make sure you're comfortable with before we go down that road. And we don't have to decide that today. Um, it's something I would just say if it's something we want to think about, then okay, let's plan for it, and we put a plan together and bring it back to you. Um, so think about it further. I want to be clear. I'm not saying no. I wanted to say, let's all be sure. That's it. Okay. Um, so are there any comments about, I don't want to skip over another set of important questions, and that has to do with, the, standards and county options. So, you know, there is something that is in the nature of the 28E agreement and sort of the current code requirement that says hey, everybody has to participate, um, that rubs the wrong way. Okay. And so uh, it would be helpful in future planning, regardless of the disposition of the legislation that's pending, whether it happens or not. If there are perspectives that members of the subcommittee or that you've talked to other people in your districts about, that would suggest that, hey, you know, we need to have more choices. And I wanted to present it from the standpoint of, you know, the questions that have been asked, this cycle relating to the 28-year agreement, you know, what we're doing today um, isn't on a stone tablet somewhere. It was created in legislation back in 2005. And expectations were set about, hey, this is the way we want to do things. And there are a lot of things that fed into that. And what's being said uh, is um, um, is that um, the uh, the paradigm needs to shift. That's kind of what is being presented and proposed. Um, and you know, I've never been one to really be supportive of the idea that hey, we've always done it that way. It can never change. I've never been that guy. Um, so you know, we're faced with these questions, and we say, okay, what should we do differently? And so when you talk um, about you know, the policies and procedures, the assumption has been, hey, you know, we're all part of the Recorders Association, right? Everybody is represented here. They're a part of the 28-year agreement. And the idea is to create some consistency and for the benefit of not only recorders, but also service providers. Does that does that idea need to be challenged? If there is a discussion about, hey, as a county, I wish we had more options. Well, aside from the idea of being able to use your vendor's individual um, e-recording platform, whatever that may be, are there other things that also should be talked about and considers. So, uh, this is, I guess, to me, another opportunity to have that conversation, not necessarily to make final decisions today, but to receive input from you. You guys talk to your members in your respective association districts. You have conversations with each other. Um, you may say, in addition to the software changes that we talked about earlier, I wish things were different. Well, what would you say? What would you want? What you want us and the leadership of ESS and the association want to hear? Are there anything anybody has to add that would shed more light on this whole subject? Are there changes that you would like to make in the behavior and operation of this subcommittee? Are there things that we should be doing differently? I hate to leave pregnant pauses, but um, these are legitimate, and I'm being absolutely serious in posing these questions to y'all. Is it something that you want to think about further and maybe put on the agenda for a future meeting, or you need or want to have this conversation in a different forum?
Phil, I guess I'll just say one thing. For the most part, I think agreeable with most everything. I think that sometimes, at least in our district, some of the things we've talked about is having the requirement of such long reference numbers or document numbers and how that's going to look, or the e-submission stamps only be some of those types of things. I would say, generally speaking, most things are fine, but some of those types of differences, um, allowing for the recorders to make some of those decisions on their own.
I guess one thing I would say is that I think as members of the standard subcommittee that when we talk about policy, uh, I think it would be helpful for us and for each of you and the others who are listening in as an audience to be mindful of when we're talking about a specific issue or idea, to say, is this something that we should allow variance on, and just, say this is an area that recorders should have independent decision making on, or is this something that really belongs in um, the uh, the standard setting process? And I would just say, from my point of view, historically speaking, the idea in the case of the reference number, you know, is not it's not a new issue. As I mentioned in the message, it goes back to, you know, a decade ago when it was first talked about. And now, in terms of advancing the legislation in terms of standards, it was viewed as, you know, in some respects, a very symbolic gesture to say, yeah, we recorded, we believe in standards, we want consistency. Here's evidence of that. From our perspective, from a practical standpoint, the reason why I would advocate for it is because every document is not assigned a unique number in the state. And there are thousands of documents out there in different counties that all have the same reference number in one form or another. And we, in order to make associated references work for the entire state system, we have to make sure that we have a unique identifier for every single document. It has to be unique. And we have asked service providers to make sure that happens. And we've given them latitude in how that happens. And what we have found over time, particularly in circumstances where a county changes from one service provider to another, that those code values get changed. Sometimes they don't tell us the code values get changed. And then we end up with duplicates in our system that have to be cleaned up. So if everybody did use a standard reference numbering system going forward, that could ensure a unique value, then and we could resolve that issue. So it there is a standard in the new House File 328 that would be established. I'm not sure it meets the uniqueness test, so that problem doesn't get solved.
Hey, so Phil, I guess I personally can make it work and have no problem. We can adjust font sizes and whatnot. But I guess some of the other counties were having, it talked about the number of characters and the size, it's going to be too small to read, and other characteristic makeups. I don't think it has necessarily to do with the standardization of the county, the year starting at number 1 calendar year. It has more to do with how to get that large of a number on a stamp type of stuff.
Well, I, I, the best answer I have for you right now is that we went to the service providers. We have quarterly meetings with them. They don't always show up, but we have the meetings, and then we record them so that they want to look at them later. I think it can be said that I am not shy about sending emails to all of the service providers about things that are coming up or things they should prepare for. And one of the questions, particularly throughout 2024, that we asked them about is, okay, we're looking at a standard for document reference numbers that could be up to 12 digits. Is there anybody, this is a direct question to them, is there anybody that can't handle a reference numbering system with 12 digits in the following format? And not a single service provider came back and said that they couldn't do it. So communication needs to be a two-way street. And I haven't heard anybody say ever until now that 12 digits is too many. So maybe we need to take another look at that, but it's never been said, not to me.
And maybe it's been resolved, I guess, if you've had meetings with them, but I do know last fall that I think it was Tyler that was having issues with that. Like I said, personally, I'm fine. I'm just wanting to make sure all the recorders that do have issues, their voices being heard. So maybe, like I said, that's been resolved after your meetings with the stakeholders.
Oh, in this case, I'm not talking about stakeholders. I'm talking about the service providers. Um, so it's an ongoing process. And it doesn't, it may not get resolved this year. I think the only technical thing I would say is that, what's in House File 328 kind of moves in that direction, but it doesn't answer the uniqueness issue across the entire state. So
CPA says that it's been resolved, so I don't think
Yeah.
there's an issue.
yeah. Okay. Are there, I don't mean to have this discussion just be about the document reference number. I think the bigger question really still is, we've set up a process, we've followed a process. Sorry, I'm flipping around here a little bit on my notes, but um, we've um, we've started a process um, that we've followed for 20 years now. Okay, we've got a standard subcommittee. Standard subcommittee needs to be the voice for the various districts of the association. We follow a practice of bringing policy to you, just as we did today, to update our terms of service that we're then going to take to the ESS coordinating committee for review, which is also representative of all of the recorders. And it has been thought that there is legitimacy to that. And because it's all recorders mostly, we have a few stakeholders represented on the governing board, but because it's been all recorders, the thinking has been, and again, I'm not saying we've always done it that way, but the thinking has been, okay, we have a representative governance process, and we don't make independent decisions. That is, I will stand by this, that I do not make policy. I recommend policy frequently, but I don't make it. It goes through the process. So if this isn't the right process, if it's so uncomfortable that um, um, that you can't get there, um, then it is something that we need to talk about. Um, I I don't mean to go back to this, but I don't want to ignore questions that are being asked. So question is, what about counties who still want to use book and page? I'd have to go back and see how House File 328 reads now to answer that. But I know in Senate File 371, as we originally proposed it, anybody who uses book and page could still use book and page in addition to the standard reference number. That sort of a tradition, I think, in some counties, and I don't think we're intending to ask anybody to give that up. So that may need to be revisited. And then the next question was, will the standard be for over-the-counter mail traditional physical documents? And the answer to that is, if it were adopted as a standard, then yes, it would be the same format. And, you know, um, basically it's the counties to specify the reference number. So the intent would be to have it apply to both physical and electronic documents. I would have to again defer to the local service provider to give us feedback if they've felt they had some limitations on the physical documents. And thus far, when we've raised the question, nobody has said that they would. But it may be a fair question to ask your service provider. Good questions. Thank you. Okay, I'm skipping back through the chat pod just to make sure I haven't missed any questions. If anybody thinks I've missed a question, could you copy and paste it back in the chat pod or give us a shout? So, any other broader thoughts about setting policy? Whoops.
I feel our process is pretty good. This is Kathy. Just other feedback I've gotten with that reference number, I think it's more of like the county number, why we need that in front to add extra digits, like if we could all have the same, maybe standard, the 4-digit year, and then starting from 0 for the document number, but didn't know why we really need to add our
Yeah.
county number in front of it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Fair question. And the primary reason was because it would add that uniqueness to it. So that a number assigned to one, so if you just said 2025 and then a 6-digit number, that could be the same in 99 counties, right? And so the county 2-digit prefix is really intended to ensure that uniqueness. That was the reason for it.
okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to remove this question from the table. I'm still open to questions or comments about this entire subject area, but we're down to kind of our last 20 minutes, and I would just like to broaden the subject a little bit and talk about Senate File 371, and I guess there are two things about this, and I am not going to say, hey, Senate File 371 is perfect. Open to differences of opinion, but everything that was in Senate File 371, the intent was to have everything there broadly vetted. Okay, so we went through a big process in 2024 to review document formatting. We had extensive outreach, probably more than they wanted, with the service providers. I'm sorry, the stakeholders, about, okay, we're talking about this. What would you like it to be? In some cases, I've received complaints that we talk to them too much. I find that hard to believe, but it did happen in one case, and um, the idea was to have what was in 371 vetted. We brought several iterations of this through the subcommittee, that is you, over the course of 2024. We ended up with a draft that we took back to the full ESS committee twice before we requested a bill draft. And I think from a staff perspective, we felt that we had thoroughly vetted everything. And yet there were still some rumblings or concerns expressed as we introduced the bill to say, hey, I'm not sure I support that. And so we have a live bill in the House. I'm making no predictions about the outcome, but there are a lot of ideas that are represented in Senate File 371. And then I also want to represent that there was an unintentional omission when 371 was published in the House, and that is that we had also talked about several changes in Section 55849 as represented on the page I'm showing right now. And I think the point is that it's not too late. If it's not too late, maybe if this legislation moves forward, maybe we could address these issues as intended in that bill. But it also means that, it's not too late for this subcommittee or recorder generally to go through the provisions of both House File 328 or Senate File 371 and say, are there some refinements or changes that we need to make? Or have you changed your mind on something? That's what happens in a legislative process. It always seems, in my experience, that when something actually gets in bill form, people finally pay attention. They don't always pay attention earlier, but they do when it gets into a bill form. So I want to just be on the record and just ask the members of the standard subcommittee or anybody in the audience, is there anything that you want to change? Anything that you've changed your mind about that we should know about before we communicate with the legislators again about what we want to see happen? It's a blank check question. What would you do differently now that we're almost 4 full months into the legislative session?
Is 55849 already in HF 328? Has anybody, Renee, if you're still on the call, or Aaron, can you tell me if that's in there? And what about the surveyors language?
I can tell you that we have stayed in communication with the surveyor's language. That appears to be consistent between House File 328 and Senate File 371, and that appears to be the intent. And I don't have anything specific to say from a policy perspective, that is a good idea or a bad idea, because that really hasn't seemed to change that much. But I want to just pull that up again if I can. But if you're looking at Senate File 371, there is one section missing in House File 328 that probably needs to be put back in, and that is a definition for additional postal identifier. And the reason for that is because that term is referred to in the surveyor section, and it was created as something in the definition section by the Legislative Services Agency, because in the original draft, it was in the surveyor section. But LSA, for whatever reason, moved that definition and the definition for postal identifier into 321-601A. I don't know why they did that, but they did. So in order for the surveyor's section to be complete, we probably, before this is all said and done, need to put this additional postal identifier back in. And to answer Carolyn's question, yes, we just need a friendly amendment, and that can be talked about. And that can be talked about. So I don't think there was any, policy intent to leave it out. I've never heard any concern about it. It just didn't happen. And sometimes that happens in legislative drafting. So, and I'm also reading Renee's comment about 55849. Yeah, it was unintentionally omitted from 371. And, I don't think it was done, left out intentionally in 328 because it was in 371, right? So that's something that can be revisited as well. I think the question I would maybe ask is, give a fresh look to what we said we wanted to do in 55849, the intention was because you got two sections of the code about formatting and indexing, one of them in 331, 606, I think it is. And then you got the separate section about indexing of conveyance documents. Why the Iowa Code has two different sections, that I'm not sure, but they exist historically for a reason. So the idea was to make the 55849 section kind of parallel what was in 331 606.
Okay, so you'll work with those and try and get that added back in then as well, 558.49 plus the additional parcel identifier definition, correct?
Yes. So I'm not raising this as a big policy debate. I'm just, to me, it's a technical thing that could be revisited, and I don't I don't know what the right procedure is. Pretty straightforward in the legislature. We just have to get all the parties together and agree to it. Renee has asked a question in the I don't mean to keep calling you out, Renee, but I appreciate the dialogue. How do we move forward since leadership decided not to move forward with communicating with the legislature on the bill? And I'm not the one to answer that question. I guess I would just observe that now that the bill is out of Ways and Means Committee, uh, um, that the perspective on, okay, let's reevaluate. And I think leadership conversations are going to take place to make that decision. And I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think communication is going to stop entirely. It did for a while. It can be restarted, and that I'll leave it there for now. So stay tuned. Anything else? All right. So uh, I'm going to leave the meeting today with this, and that is that you are officially invited to contemplate the memos and the questions that are represented in this packet of materials. And if you have input, if you don't feel comfortable sharing it with me, please share it with your representative on the ESS committee, or share it with your representative on the ICRA executive board. Communicate with them. If there are things that you want to really talk about, this is a great opportunity for everybody to visit with each other and see if a meeting of the minds can be achieved. The other invitation is revisit the language in Senate File 371, take another look at this amendment, proposed amendment to 55849. Also give a read to the provisions of Senate File 328, which have now been presented to you, and see where the commonalities are, and then hopefully things can move forward and come together. That's my offer to you to contribute to the dialogue.
This is Kathy Voith. I just kind of want to give my just kind of words on this 328 bill. I really feel like it would be a good thing if it passes. I don't feel like really many counties would opt out of the 28E agreement now. My opinion is I just see it as a thing in the future. If something happened in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that it should be an option to be able to opt out. I have no plans of opting out now. And I really feel like it would be still a lot more money for ESS getting this passed so you guys could make some improvements to the search applications and different things. And it definitely will bring in a lot more money to the counties, to the general fund, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate those comments. Anybody else? and comments that were in the chat pod, just let me say that those will be shared with the association leadership. And I'm going to be hopeful. Okay, I'll leave it there.
I guess,
Uh,
yeah, I would agree with what Kathy said. This is Carolyn with Lynn County. This is moving forward regardless, and I think working together is our best opportunity to come close to the best outcome possible.
Understood. I think I want to just leave you with a quick update on some of the special projects. And so I would want to share with you that you know, obviously if no legislation passes and there are no additional resources to for the ESS system in a meaningful way, that obviously I think that will you know, affect our ability to move forward with some of the special projects that we were highlighting. Um, uh, there are some things that will, if 328 passes in whatever form, you know, it will require an investment to implement the Back to Blue Shielding program. Um, and so hopefully the resources are going to be there for that. We understand that there is still a very high interest in the property notification system. I know not everybody agrees with that, but from an association-wide perspective, there still seems to be a lot of interest in that. And the early work that we did, going back more than a year now, you know, to begin the design of that, you know, it was relatively robust. Um, and you know, but it doesn't mean that the entire issue has to die. So what we're looking at right now, and I guess maybe I'm speaking mostly internally from me and our staff perspective, is okay, is there a simpler version of it that we could start with to do something that may not have all the bells and whistles? And I think the answer to that is yes. Um, um, we're not trying to replicate local systems. This is something different that we're talking about with a different focus, but still potentially valuable to the citizens as well as the real estate industry. So I think there are some possibilities to move forward with something in that area. It just won't necessarily be as robust as we originally envisioned. And I would say the same thing about working with the surveyors on getting more historic surveys that are not recorded online somehow. I think with the elbow grease that the surveyors have volunteered to put in on that it's not going to happen overnight, but over time, I think you know we can definitely make progress on that. And the surveyors as a group have been very, very good to work with. The other thing that I have heard comments about um, is, you know, kind of seeing what can be done to build on the work that Lynn County has done on their registration renewal system and to see if something like that can be created for participation by other counties. Again, I'm not going to say it's going to be as dynamic or with all the bells and whistles that maybe had been originally envisioned, but it still may be possible to do something like that. Um, so I would see those things as a possibility to move forward. Um, it would be easier to do if we get some legislation passed. Um, and if it doesn't pass, then that doesn't mean that every idea is dead. We're going to continue to explore ways that we can make progress on them. And that's sort of my update on the sort of the special projects front. So I guess the short message is um, there are some issues that are going to be very hard to do without additional resources. Um, but there are some things that maybe in a scaled back sort of way can be accomplished, and we're going to be looking for those opportunities. The quick answer to the question in the chat pod about are they agreeable? Most of the work to assemble the data is going to be on the part of the surveyors. The the idea of throwing up a database to put that information in is a relatively inexpensive activity. So from my point of view, being a part of the planning process with them, they're making a very significant contribution. And it wouldn't be our intention to, be sending the surveyors a big bill for development time, because I just don't think in the end it's gonna be that much. The real work is assembling the data, getting imaging done, and also organizing the information that would be included in any index. And they have volunteered to do all of that work. So that's kind of that way I view that. I don't think it's a situation where we're giving stuff away. They're gonna be doing their share, uh, if we're able to proceed with that. And we're approaching the noon hour. I promised you 2 hours. I think you've had to listen to me maybe more than I wanted to, but hopefully we've got some issues out on the table and an open invitation for you to give your answers to some of these questions to your representatives on ESS committee, as well as to the ICRA governing board. That's all I have today. I again invite members of the committee to consider stepping forward to volunteer to be the chair of this group going forward and to facilitate future meetings. But I'll keep doing it as long as you'll have me, but there is another way to do it, so consider it and we can talk about it next time. That's all I have, everybody. Thank you so much. I wish you a great weekend, and please stay tuned because I think there are many more conversations ahead regarding the legislation. And I'm going to stop the recording now. Have a great day. Thank you.